Well, they just sent me an email, so I don't know. I got it at 4:49.
Okay. Well, you'll have to, again, you'll need to click on the confirmation and then everything's at app.protectthevote.net.
Sorry.
Okay, so are we in on this one?
You're in the Zoom room now. Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. We'll give people just about another 30 seconds or so. My records show we got a few more people signed up. All right, good evening. Welcome to the Missouri Election Protection Field Training for the upcoming August 6th, 2024 primary elections. Welcome, everybody. Tonight's training is being recorded, and there's also going to be a live on-demand recording at protectthevote.net. Thank you all for joining. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen, and in particular, want to take a moment to welcome several of our election protection field coordinators. We've got Pat Jones Macklin and Anita Russell, who run the program in Kansas City. Welcome, welcome. And Don Crozier, who runs the program in St. Charles County. Welcome. Don, if you don't mind, I'm going to mute you because there's some background noise where you're at. Okay. Good evening and welcome to our election protection training for the August 6th primary elections. This training is being brought to you by the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition and our many, many organizational partners who co-anchor Missouri's nonpartisan election protection program in Missouri. We're the state voting rights table. We work to advance free, fair, and accessible voting for all Missourians with particular focus on communities whose voices are too often silenced and who are the targets of efforts to make voting harder, in particular communities of color. Also low-wage workers, young voters, seniors, voters with disabilities, English plus communities, and sexual minorities. And we advance this mission by anchoring policy advocacy, strategic litigation, voter education, and this flagship program. And we're so grateful for your help because this program is really terrific and it wouldn't be able to happen without all of you who are here tonight. So we're going to learn all about it. Our goals today, we're going to get an overview of election protection, the roles of poll monitors and roving monitors. You're going to learn how to sign up for your shift, how to report issues at the polls, and we'll cover the top 5 big issues that we anticipate you may face and the voters that you interact with may face on election day and how to resolve them. And we'll have time for any questions and answers. So hopefully by the end of today's program, you'll know what your role is and how to answer common questions and how to escalate problems that voters are experiencing at the polls. One reason why this program is as strong as it is because Poll monitors are the eyes and the ears of voters' experiences on the ground. And when something goes wrong, y'all can get it reported immediately. We know that the longer a problem goes on, the worse that it gets. So something that is causing long lines to develop, the sooner we get that fixed, the less those lines get exponentially larger. The sooner we can get an individual help who's being turned away from the polls, the more likely it is they're going to be able to cast their ballot and not just walk away. So thank you all. So some of the vocabulary you're going to hear today include election protection. That's the program that we are running here that operates the 866 Our Vote election protection hotline. You'll hear the term poll monitors. Tonight's training is a poll monitor training. These are for people that are working with this program who are going to be at polling places to provide voters with information, help them resolve disputes, and be that friendly face to the voter. Poll monitors are different from poll workers. Poll workers are people who are paid by the election authority and work inside the polling place and process voters as they're coming in to vote. And so that's not the role we're playing here today, though certainly we recommend if you are able to serve as a poll worker, every election authority needs more poll workers, but it's a very different job and it's a much longer job as well. A second. See. Sorry about that. I'm having some issues with my. All right. Can you see what is election protection? Is that the screen that's showing up? Okay, great. Here. So election protection is a nationwide program. It is the nation's largest nonpartisan voter protection coalition. It has programs operating in 40 states. Here in Missouri, we have one of the longest standing election protection programs in the entire country. We've been operating here in Missouri since 2006, and I gotta give a big shout out again to Anita Russell and Pat Jones-Macklin, who run the Kansas City, who are the field regional leads for Kansas City, who have been running that program there since 2006. 18 years, y'all. That's a long time.
That means we're old.
Oh dear.
For yourself, Pat.
That means you are seasoned and experienced. That's how I'm going to say it. Seasoned. And so for those of you who are on from the Kansas City area, know that you've got really literally two of the most experienced election protection coordinators in the entire country, because we've been doing this for so long. Our goal is to ensure that every voter is able to cast a ballot first and foremost. So that's your number one goal when you're at the polls on election day. Help ensure voters have the information they need and help them address it and figure out what's going wrong if they face any problems at the polls so they can vote. More globally, though, you're going to be the eyes and ears of many voters' experiences, and you can help us identify where problems are coming up. Sometimes an issue might be something that's just limited to that one voter. Maybe that one voter doesn't have the correct form of ID. But other issues might start cropping up again and again, and they may affect everybody. For example, if the accessible entrance is not opened, for example, that we can do some important advocacy right in the moment and help fix that problem from then on for everybody else. You're also there to help deflect deceptive practices, disinformation, intimidation, voter suppression. And at the end of the day, all of the reports that we generate get collected into a full statewide database, and we're able to paint a real picture that's data-driven, that shows where the problems happened, what kinds of problems they were, and that really helps us identify our key advocacy for the future. or legal action for the future. It will help determine how we go about moving forward in the coming year. And so the most important phone number to know is this one, 866 Our Vote, 866-687-8683. You can call or text that number, and that's the National Election Protection Hotline. There are call centers in many places around the country, including one right here in Missouri. And that means that anybody who calls election protection from the state of Missouri is going to have that call answered right here by a lawyer in Missouri who understands the rules of the road for Missouri. You should also know that our partners collaborate to provide assistance in languages other than English. So there is a hotline that will speak to voters in Spanish, 888 VOTA, a hotline that will speak, that is an Arabic language hotline, 844 Yalla US, and a hotline that can speak to voters in Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Bengali, Hindu, Urdu, and Tagalog, 888 API Vote. All of these hotline numbers are on the materials you're going to have with you on election day, the election protection palm cards. So you don't need to memorize anything in this training tonight. And so the way that the program works is that it combines the efforts of the legal folks who are there taking calls on the hotline directly from voters or you in real time, as well as attorneys that have particular areas of expertise who are in the escalation room. And those are the ones who are addressing systemic problems, real issues that are coming up that need some further advocacy with election officials. And all of that is complemented by the field team. Those of you who are out at polling places, monitoring polls, or those of you who have agreed to be a roving monitor and be dispatched out to a polling place when a particular kind of call comes in. And when we can all communicate together, there's a Zoom room that it will allow all the regional leads to be in touch with the lawyers, report back. The lawyers can reach out to the regional leads and say, hey, we just got a call about something happening at Harper Elementary. Do we have a poll monitor at that location? If not, can we send somebody there to document the situation? And that allows us to respond immediately in real time. Here's a photograph of the call center in Kansas City, Missouri, operated out of the Stinson Law Firm. Some of those folks are able to actually answer those calls remotely this year. Here are some of our friends and the legal escalation team. We partner with Affinity Bar Associations, the Mound City Bar Association, the Jackson County Bar Association, the Hispanic Bar Association, and others to help make sure that voters are able to talk with an advocate who understands what they are going through in that moment and give them immediate help. And so here's how the process works. Voters can call, and poll monitors as well. You call into 866 Our Vote. From Missouri, a call center lawyer in Missouri is going to answer you directly and gather information about the situation. If it's the voter, they're going to get the voter's information. If you're calling in on behalf of a voter, they're going to document the kind of problem that you say the voter is experiencing, and sometimes may also talk directly with the voter. Sometimes the issues are simple. Someone may simply call up and say, what time did the polls close? And at that point, the attorney can simply respond that the polls are open until 7 p.m. And if you're there by 7 p.m., you can vote. And that's it. That's all the voter needed. They have the information they need. That file gets closed. However, if there are unresolved issues, someone that's saying, they're telling me I can't vote. They're telling me I have to present 2 forms of ID. They're telling me I can't cast a provisional ballot. I'm in a wheelchair and there's no accessible voting and no one will come out and vote me in my car. Those are things that require immediate attention. And that's when the escalation team will jump right in, get on the phone with the election officials, maybe get on the phone with you, the poll monitor, to document the situation and figure out what needs to happen right now to fix it. And then our lawyers get on and advocate for that to happen right now. And I'll tell you, our track record is pretty good, because we don't advocate for action that the law doesn't require. When we make these calls, they know that we have done our homework and that the law requires it. I see a hand up. Do you have a question? Okay. So typically we're able to resolve issues that come up. In some cases, if there is a situation where there's intimidation, perhaps we might ask you to document the situation, take a photograph of the situation. Ultimately, if we cannot resolve it, we have filed lawsuits on election day before. But typically we can get the situation resolved without having to do that. Yes, you have a hand up.
When you said 7 o'clock, if there's a line, does the line get to vote?
Yes.
Or yes?
Yes, and we're going to cover all that in just a minute when we get to the substance. Let me finish.
Okay.
We're almost done with the process part here, but yes, anyone in line at 7 p.m. is allowed to vote. So the role that you play as poll monitors are really, really important to this whole string of communication that's going on. So let's make sure that everybody is set and ready to go. Number one, you need to sign up at protectthevote.net. And you need to do that even if you've done it in the past. Because if you're in the system from the past, you'll be listed as someone who participated in the past, but you won't necessarily get updates for this election. So sign up at protectthevote.net. When you do, you'll get a confirmation email that will then take you back to the system and allow you to sign up for a training and then sign up for your shift. The trainings are happening all week long, and this one is being recorded. There will also be opportunities to just do your own training on demand with a recording. There will be a short quiz after the training that you'll need to complete in order to sign up for your shift. So hang on here. I'm going to show you the process for how to make sure you are in fact signed up. Oopsie. Sorry about that.
Volunteers will go to the protectthevote.net website. Once they scroll down, they will enter their information, their first and last name, email, mobile phone number, zip code. They will agree to the Election Protection Nonpartisan Agreement, and then they will opt into automatic occasional messaging, and then select Submit. It will show them this message, and then they will go to their email address. Once they're in their email address, they will use this magic link to log in. Once they have logged in using the magic link, they will confirm their information, so ensuring their first and last name is correct, their email, their phone number, zip code, their state is correct, and then they are required to choose a county. Once they've selected their county, they will select Save, and then they can go and find a training. They will search for trainings. They will see all trainings available. They will select the training that they would like to attend. This is a virtual training, a little description. They will select the time that they are available and the date. And then we will say, yes, I want to receive messaging reminders for text. And yes, I want to receive messaging reminders for email. And then I will register for the training. It will give me this information, letting me know that it is virtual. Here's the training link. And if I need to reschedule, I can reschedule training by selecting
So once you've done the training, you'll get a link to a quiz. This is a sample quiz. Our quiz is not posted yet, so just be patient. It will come. It will only have 2 or 3 short questions that should be pretty easy to answer. And once you do that, you'll be able to then sign up for a shift and your location that will be based on the jurisdiction where you live. So you'll get to be in a place that's nearby. And the shifts can be as few as 3 hours, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. are the busiest times when the polls first open and and get ready to close. That tends to be when things are busiest and also when things can go awry. Another busy time is over that lunch hour, 11 to 2, but you are welcome to sign up for a half day or a full day if you wish. So here's how you're going to sign up for your shifts.
Once a volunteer has successfully completed the training and passed the quiz, they will be able to sign up for a shift. So they will go back into the database, select Find a Shift, and then enter their zip code, address, date, or time, or some sort of factor to filter. I'm going to enter Broward and select Filter. And all the shifts that are populated in Broward County will appear. So I'm going to find a shift. This one is 10.96 miles. You can also be very specific and type in your address to find out which one is closest. And I'm going to sign up for this shift at the Southwest Regional Library. I want the time from 3:30 to 7:30 and select sign up for shift. It says I have signed up for shift successfully. And then let's say I want to do another shift. And maybe I want to do one that's at Chapel Trail Elementary School. Let's do them for an earlier time. I've successfully signed up for that shift as well. And then back to the home base. And at the home base, volunteers will be able to see what shifts they signed up for. So I signed up for 2 shifts, one at Chapel Trail Elementary School on the 19th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then the other one at Southwest Regional Library from 3:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And that is how volunteers find their shift, sign up for a shift, and they're able to see the shifts.
All right. So once you've signed up for your shift, you want to get ready for election day. And we're going to send out information on where you can pick up your materials a little bit later on this week once we have everything confirmed. But you'll be getting a stack of palm cards that explain voters' rights, as well as an election protection button. If you have volunteered in the past and you have an election protection t-shirt, please wear that t-shirt on election day. We don't have new t-shirts coming in for the primaries, but we are expecting to get new t-shirts on for the general elections from our national partners. So at minimum, you will be identified with a button, but if you do have a shirt from previous years, please go ahead and wear it for the August. Make sure your phone is charged. And again, make sure you're wearing the button or something else that identifies you as a nonpartisan election protection volunteer. This program is nonpartisan, so you cannot wear any partisan gear. That means you cannot wear anything that supports a candidate or a political party or a ballot measure. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't wear those things at a different time of the day. You most certainly can, just not while you're standing at the polls as an election protection monitor. Because remember, our goal is to be there for every voter. Our goal is to ensure every voter is able to cast a ballot, no matter who or what they want to vote for. Make sure that you are dressed comfortably, dressed for the weather. If it's warm, make sure you got maybe a hat or some sunglasses or sunscreen. I cannot emphasize enough comfortable shoes. As I get more seasoned myself, I've come to appreciate the value of comfortable shoes. You are free to bring a folding chair if you want, some snacks if you want, though your regional leads will also be checking in on you to make sure that you're okay and see if you need anything, and are also happy to bring water by if you need it. So who are those regional leads? Well, here are the folks that you'll be connecting with directly as you get ready for election day and to pick up your materials. In St. Louis City and St. Louis County, it is the tag team of Holly Bernstein and Michelle Steinberg. In St. Charles County, you saw it's Don Crozier with the League of Women Voters. In Kansas City, it is the dynamic duo of Pat Jones-Macklin and Anita Russell. And in Southwest Missouri, it's Marla Morantz, who covers, it's going to be operating 4 to 6 counties or so in Southwest Missouri. And in Missouri, the League of Women Voters, Sharon Schneeberger and Marilyn McLeod, are helping coordinate those volunteers. And again, you're going to hear from us. Anyone who is signed up at protectthevote.net will get all of the information on where to pick up your materials. Just an FYI, Pat and Anita, the Kansas City materials are done and they are ready for pickup at Almar. Everything has been paid for, so they are ready to go.
We got them.
Woohoo! All right, so then election day happens. What do you do? Well, show up at the polling place you signed up for at the time that you've signed up for. And if you need to switch something around, again, just let your regional coordinator know. We can be, there's some flexibility in it. Once you get to your polling place, you might be relieving somebody on an earlier shift, or you might not. Stay at least 25 feet from the door. That is the legal buffer zone in Missouri, and no one is allowed to interact with voters closer than 25 feet from the door. Now, don't worry, you don't need to bring a tape measure or anything like that. How will you know where 25 feet is? It's where everybody else is standing too, because nobody's allowed to be within 25 feet of the door. And what are you going to do? You are going to distribute those palm cards to voters, ask if they have any questions that you'd be happy to help answer for them. And you'll have the ability to complete a short polling place checklist on your phone. And as issues come up, you'll try to resolve them with the voter or call them in to the 866 Our Vote hotline. And we're going to go over kind of some scenarios of how to do that. For those of you who might be roving monitors, and different jurisdictions are going to handle this a little bit differently, these are folks who agree to get dispatched out to maybe multiple polls to do a checklist of several polls in a particular area, or deliver materials if you're running out of materials to a particular poll. Or if something gets called in and we don't have a monitor there, you might be asked, hey, can you go to Harper Elementary right now? We just got a call that there is a group intimidating voters and we need to get some documentation. And so you'll have the opportunity to complete a polling place checklist from that same app at protectthevote.net from your phone. Those of you who have done this in the past and tried to use the JOT form and the external forms, we're not using that anymore. This is going to be a much, much easier way to report. You can also report incidents from your polling place using this app, but you don't have to. You can also just call 866 Our Vote. And here's how that digital reporting will work.
Today I'm going to show you how to complete the Election Protection Volunteer Incident Report. This is a critical part of being a volunteer, and you will have access to this link from your state lead, and you can fill this out as many times as needed. So for each state, it's going to look similar to this. You will have your volunteer name. A drop link will appear with all of the names of the volunteers. You will go and find your name. If you do not see your name, you will add it to this link right here. So you will add your polling place. Again, a drop link will appear with all of the different polling places. Add the one that you're at. What kind of report is this? So you'll have a few options. So is this a specific voter having a problem, or is this a problem at a polling place? And so for each one, different questions will appear. So what kind of issue does the voter have? You can select the options. So let's just say voter registration issue. What is the voter registration issue? And it'll give you a bunch of different options for the specific issue. Let's say inactive voter. You can also add subcategories. So this is someone, this is someone that's in person trying to vote. This is someone that had an absentee or mail-in ballot. You add the voter's name, their last name, their address, the city and zip code, their phone number, any additional notes you'd like to add, giving just more descriptive information about what the problem is, their voting method, any images you'd like to add, so you just select attach, drop here. And does someone from the command center need to follow up with this? And then dropping down will appear yes or no. So for each issue, for the reporting, it'll be a different set of questions. So if there's a problem at the polling place, a different set of subcategory questions and types of problems that are in the drop-down menu will appear. And that is how you complete the incident reporting form for a volunteer.
Okay, hang on. Ah. Sorry about that. I'm having some issues with my sharing. Uh-oh. There we go. It just there we go. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. So again, you don't have to make your reports digitally, but you can. You can also complete just a polling place checklist on that phone, which will just allow you to document, hey, is there adequate parking? Is there signage? Is there an election protection sign, etc.? But mostly you're going to refer to the materials themselves to answer voter questions. And so we're going to go over the top 5 issues that voters may confront, and we're going to show you exactly where you can find the answers on these palm cards. But just to get started, what are you going to do? Well, when you're standing there, you want to make sure that you're visible, that you have a smile on your face. Keep in mind that you're probably one of the only people at a polling place that's not trying to get the voter to buy something from you. You're not advocating for a candidate. You're not advocating for a political party. You're the only one that's there just for them, just to help make sure they can vote. So I always recommend being friendly. Voting can be stressful for some people, and certainly the vitriol of the recent politics doesn't help that. People may have some anxiety about coming to vote. So I just recommend smiling. And as someone shows up to come vote, have the palm card in your hand, present it to the voter and say, hi, I'm Denise. I'm with the Nonpartisan Election Protection Program. Let me know if you have any questions or any problems. We've got lawyers ready to help. And if they have a question right then, they might say, oh, thanks. Will this ID work? Otherwise, they'll say thank you and maybe go inside. Now, you can't go inside with them. So how will you know if they have a question? Well, you've let them know that you're there if they did have a problem. And guess what? People are typically not shy when they are upset about something. And since you told them you could help them, they're going to come back out and find you. So just to recap, as a poll monitor, can you volunteer with other organizations or campaigns? Yes, but not while you're doing election protection. We have to say nonpartisan, and we're not there just for some voters. We're there for all voters. But it's perfectly fine if you want to do election protection in the morning and go work for your candidate in the afternoon. That's totally fine. You just can't represent a party or a candidate as election protection. Can you stay longer? Sure. We're never going to turn you down for that. Can you vote during your shift? Sure. If you end up volunteering at your own polling place, or if you're in a jurisdiction that allows you to vote at any polling place, no reason you can't vote during your shift. And guess what? Those election protection t-shirts, they're not electioneering. You can wear them in to vote. But can you ask someone how they voted or suggest who they vote for? No. Can you distribute partisan material or ask people to sign a petition? No. Can you challenge a voter's eligibility to vote? No. And should you engage in a confrontation with volunteers? No. And in fact, what we want to do is help de-escalate any kinds of tension that might be there. And that's why you being there as a friendly face really matters. So these are just the final process reminders here. You are not in this alone. Even if you might be at some of you are going to be at a polling place with a buddy, which is great. Some of you might be at a polling place all by yourself, but you're never alone. You are one phone call away from all of the lawyers who are going to be in that election protection command room taking these calls. When in doubt, call. It's fine. You are not bothering anyone. That's the whole point of this hotline. So anything that comes up, just call us. It's fine. And you can also call your regional coordinators if you have any needs. You can go to the bathroom during your shift. If you need to leave early, just let your regional coordinator know. It's all fine. Again, just as a reminder, we're nonpartisan. We help all voters. So don't share your political beliefs with voters or volunteers. That's not the place for that. If you're there with your best friend, you can certainly talk amongst each other because you know each other. But really, the whole point of this is that voters feel like somebody's there for them and somebody's there to help them if they have any problems voting. Don't get into arguments. Don't get into arguments. This is not the place for it. Okay. The arguments or anything nasty that happens at a polling place does nothing but make voters unhappy and less likely to vote in the future. Instead, if there is something going down, document the situation, take a photo with your camera, write down what's happening, report it, call us at 866-OUR-VOTE. So any questions on that process before we get into the key issues? And we're going to cover 5. All righty. Let's jump right into part 2 here. So what kinds of issues might you confront at the polls? Well, the first one is a pretty common one, even if it's not the sexiest issue. But a lot of people have problems with voter registration. And they may show up at their polling place and they're told, you're not on the rolls. They don't need to leave. They don't need to go home. There might be any number of reasons their name isn't on the roll. And it might just be a typo or a clerical issue that a simple phone call could just resolve and allow them to vote. So it might be that a voter moved and never updated their voter registration. And that's why they're not on the rolls in that new jurisdiction. Maybe they registered to vote, but they registered after the July 10th voter registration deadline. Well, unfortunately, that person is eligible to vote in November, but can't vote in August. So some people get confused about whether, in fact, they're still registered to vote. The voter registration deadline for the upcoming August 6th primaries was back on July 10th. So someone needed to be registered by July 10th to vote on August 6th. However, anybody that's registered after that time should be good to go for the November presidential elections. That registration deadline is October 9th. It's approximately 1 month before Election Day. So if a voter comes to you and has this kind of a question or a problem, you might want to ask some follow-up questions. Do you remember when you registered to vote? Have you moved since you last registered to vote? And a really good question to ask is, did you receive a voter notification card in the mail from your election authority? Because guess what? They send them out before every election to every registered voter. And if the person got it, that's a great sign that they are in fact a valid registered voter and they can vote. And it might just be a mistake. Voters who moved within the same county, they can just update their registration at the polling place. They can go to their polling place. The poll worker will find them and say, oh, do you still live at 123 Main Street? And the voter can say, oh, I moved across the street to 456 Main Street, and can update it right then and there. But if you've moved to a new county in Missouri, you will need to register in that county, either online or using the postcard. The good news is that if you are already registered in Missouri, there's no longer a deadline to get that done. But if you've moved from one county to another county, you're not going to be able to update that registration at the polls on election day. You can only do it at election board headquarters. That's why it's a good idea to update your address before election day. Another big problem that people have is, where do I vote? And this can be confusing because a lot of places have changed voting locations. And in fact, your polling place, even if we're using the same polling locations, your polling place may have changed because of redistricting. You might be in a completely new district. Even if you have been voting at the same place for 20 years, it might not be your polling place this time. So it does make sense to double check. And guess what? Those folks at 866 Our Vote, they can look up the voter and find out exactly which polling place they're registered at and tell them exactly where they need to go. You can also check your registration online, or you can help a voter using your phone and look up at sos.mo.gov/elections. The other thing that you can do is go back to that mailing that you got from the local election authority. So this is an old postcard that from St. Louis City Board of Elections, where before they allowed people to vote at any polling place. And so this is an example. Different counties have different, the postcard may look a little bit different, but it will include information like the date of the election and where your polling place is located. So this is a great place to look and see if your polling place may have changed. Some jurisdictions will allow voters to cast ballots at any polling place. This is true if you are in St. Louis City or St. Louis County. Voters can vote at any polling place. Similarly, in Kansas City, you can vote anywhere if you're using an electronic machine, because they'll be able to pull up the ballot that applies specifically to your address. Some jurisdictions like Boone County will have several area-wide vote centers. Greene County will have several area-wide vote centers that you can go to. Otherwise, you can go to your local precinct and vote there. Folks in other parts of the state will also need to vote at their correct polling place. For voters that are in places that will allow you to vote anywhere, like the city of St. Louis, here's the notice that the city of St. Louis recently sent out. So instead of listing just one polling place, they're listing, here's a number of polling places that might be close to you. And it includes a QR code that you can pull up and find where all of the polling places are. So if you are in St. Louis City, for example, you can pull that up at bit.ly/STL City polling place. Here are the list of places you can vote absentee without an excuse. And all the places that will be polling places on election day. And remember, those may be different. For St. Louis County, you can go to bit.ly/STL County polling place. Here's a list of early voting locations and the locations of polls on election day. And you can also sort those by district, congressional district, Senate district, etc. Kansas City, on their website, there's a QR code. You can also pull the entire list of polling places. You can check your voting information on their website. In St. Charles County, if you put your address in, it will pull up where your polling place is located, and you can see here a map of all of the polling places. Same thing in Greene County. Here's a list of central polling locations in Springfield, Greene County, where anybody can vote, as well as the list of all of the precinct polling places. And again, here's Jefferson County. Jean Cavender, do you have a question?
Yeah, just quickly, has that whole thing around St. Louis City and voting it, so people can go to any polling place in the city and vote anywhere?
Yes, it's St. Louis
Oh.
City and St. Louis County. You
Is
can
that
vote
new?
at any
Is-
polling place.
Is
This
that
brand
new? Is
Yes.
it is new?
Yes.
Okay, so it hasn't been in effect for that long, right?
No, this will be the first election.
Thank you.
Denise, it was said in a meeting that people in Kansas City, Missouri, not Jackson County, but in Kansas City, Missouri, could vote at any polling place as long as they use the electronic one.
Yes, that's what we just said. That's on this slide right here.
Let me wake up.
Okay. So yes, again, St. Louis City and St. Louis County, you can vote at any polling place. Kansas City, as you see on this slide, you can vote at any polling place as long as you're using the electronic machine, which will allow them to pull up the ballot that is for your address. Other jurisdictions like Boone County and Greene County may have some polling places that are precinct or county-wide that anyone can vote at, and also have precinct voting. In other jurisdictions, including Jackson County, you will have to vote at the polling place that serves your address. Okay. Now, what if you show up at the polls and they say you are not on the list and you insist that you are registered to vote? What happens then? Do you have to go home? No. Both federal and state law guarantee that if the poll workers can't find you on the voter rolls and you believe you are registered to vote, that you can cast a yellow provisional ballot. And that ballot gets set aside. It will be checked after election day. And if it turns out, in fact, you were registered to vote and it was just a typo or something like that, your vote will be counted. So, think, for example, maybe you filled out the voter registration card as Henry Jones, and somebody had to enter that data into the voter rolls. And to the person at the election board, it looked like Henry James. And you go to the polling place and you say, I'm Henry Jones. And they say, I don't have a Henry Jones on the rolls here. No Henry Jones, no Henry Jones. Well, you complete that provisional ballot. By the time it gets back to the election board, they'll pull it up and they'll see, oh, this was a typo. I can see Henry Jones's voter registration card. It was a typo that it came out as Henry James. We're going to count that ballot. And guess what? Again, you don't have to memorize this. On the palm cards you're going to have with you at the polls on election day, right here at the very top on the back side, what if my name is not on the rolls? And it tells you exactly what should happen next. The poll worker should call the election authority to check that registration, because at the election authority, they have access to the full database and can figure out things like maybe it was a typo, or maybe it never got updated. And it explains here that voters can cast a provisional ballot as a last resort. But you do need to be in a polling place where you are legally allowed to cast a ballot for it to count. Next, we're going to jump into absentee voting. That's going on right now. And voters can cast absentee ballots without providing a reason at their local election authority or at satellite locations that they may set up until Monday, August 5th. Any voter can cast a ballot before Election Day between now and August 5th at the election headquarters or at a satellite voting location. Keep in mind, it may not be the same locations as the polling places on Election Day. These are just for the early voting period. You do have to show a photo ID to be able to vote in person before Election Day. Now, some of you may have requested ballots in the mail. And a lot of people have questions or get confused if maybe they requested a ballot in the mail, but maybe they never got it, or maybe they got it and never got it returned on time. Whoopsie, we're going to skip that. People who requested a ballot by mail do have to provide a reason. I'm not going to go over those reasons right now because it is currently too late to request a ballot by mail for the upcoming August 6th elections. Starting in late September, you'll be able to do so for the November elections. However, you may still get absentee ballot questions on Election Day when you're at the polls. A really common one is, I applied for an absentee ballot, but I never got it. Can I still vote? The answer is yes, they can. They can still vote on Election Day, or they can go vote right now in person absentee. Another common issue is maybe a person's coming to vote and they've got a family member who is homebound and they've got that family member's completed absentee ballot. Can they just turn that in at the polling place? No, unfortunately, they cannot. The only place you can return an absentee ballot is election board headquarters. So these are situations where voters tend to be kind of stressed out because they're like, I thought I was going to do an absentee ballot and I never got it and I never got it in. Can I still vote? Yes, yes, yes. They absolutely can. If you never got your absentee ballot in the mail, you just let the poll worker know, I applied for it, because they're going to have a list of everybody who applied to vote absentee. That helps prevent people from voting twice. But as long as you say, I never got my absentee ballot, you'll sign a statement saying I never got it, and you'll just vote a regular ballot, just like normal. Now, say maybe you did get that absentee ballot, but you never got around to filling it out or sending it back in. That's okay. If you've got it with you, you can just return it, surrender it. It gets spoiled, it doesn't count, then you just vote a regular ballot just like normal. There are no drop boxes in Missouri. You cannot return a mail-in absentee ballot to a drop box or a polling place, only election board headquarters. And those, if you did get a ballot by mail, or if you got somebody, a friend or family member who did, those ballots need to be in the hands of the election board by 7 p.m. on Election Day. Not mailed by then, they need to have received them by close of polls on Election Day. But again, if you know anybody who's stressed out about their absentee ballot, remind them that they can go vote absentee right now in person any day until 5 p.m. Monday, August 5th, including on Saturday. Again, don't worry if you don't remember all this, because look, it's right here on your palm card on the bottom of the back side. What if something went wrong with my absentee ballot? That information is right there, and you can provide all of this information to the voter to help them figure out what to do. But again, they should not have to leave the polling place without casting a ballot. All righty, number 3, photo ID. This one is a source of stress and confusion for a lot of voters because, again, this is a place where the law has changed. In 2022, Missouri lawmakers passed a law requiring strict photo ID to vote, eliminating many forms of ID that people were used to showing at the polls, like, say, that voter registration card they get in the mail. Hang on a second. Ah. Not able to. Okay. So what do you need to know about photo ID? A lot of voters may have questions like, I have this, it doesn't have my current address on it. Is that okay? Can I use it? I've got a student ID. Can I use this? So here's the skinny on what kind of ID you need to show. And again, don't worry, it is on this card. It needs to be a Missouri or federal photo ID. So a Missouri driver or non-driver's license, or a federal ID like a military ID, veteran's card, or a passport that is either not expired or is only recently expired since the most recent general election, which was November 8th, 2022. So as long as they have a Missouri or federal ID that is current or expired after November 8th, 2022, it will work. Okay. Voters that don't have one of those forms of ID, again, can still vote. They will vote a blue provisional ballot at the polling place. It looks like this envelope on the poster you see on your screen. So voters who don't have a valid ID, if they cast a blue provisional ballot, it will be counted if the signature on their blue provisional ballot matches the signature of their voter registration record, or maybe they just left it at home if they come back to the polling place with valid ID. So if you confront a voter that doesn't have ID, who's going to cast a provisional ballot, please remind them that they need to sign the ballot envelope. Otherwise, their vote will not be counted. Okay, so let's go over this one more time, some of the big questions that people get. The law eliminates things like a student ID, a government document like a utility bill, or that voter notification card, and leaves only a Missouri or federal photo ID that is expired after November 8th, 2022. Okay. So the kinds of problems that you're likely to confront or questions might be voters who are asked to show 2 forms of ID. Never. Only one is required. If a voter has a Missouri ID and it's not accepted, as long as it's expired after November 8th, 2022, they have to accept it. Or a voter that's told that the address on their driver's license has to match their voter registration. No, it does not. Or a voter who has a recently expired ID who's told they can't use it. Wrong. They are allowed to use it. Or a poll worker that tries to take a look and see if the voter really looks like the picture on their ID. Nope. We know that people's appearances can change for so many reasons. People who are gender non-conforming or transgender may physically present differently than the photo on their driver's license. People who have had illness or had cancer and been through chemotherapy may have a big head of hair in their driver's license photo and be bald when they show up to vote. Someone may not have glasses in their driver's license and have glasses when they show up to vote. So there's lots of reasons why someone's ID may not look like how they look today. So here are the most common questions you're likely to get. Here are the answers. What ID do I need? You need a Missouri or federal ID that expired after November 8th, 2022. Does the address on my ID need to match my registration? No, it does not. Those driver's licenses are good for 6 years. You might have moved in that time, and you will update your voter registration, but you're not required to get a new driver's license. Can I use an expired Missouri driver's license? Yes, as long as it expired after November 8th, 2022. Can I use a Missouri student ID? Unfortunately, no. We used to be able to, but now no longer. What about a valid Kansas or Illinois license? And our two biggest cities are right on state borders, and it's pretty common for someone to move from Illinois into St. Louis or from Kansas into Kansas City and still have their valid driver's license and not have gotten it updated yet. Unfortunately, that will not work any longer in Missouri. So you might want to ask them if they have a federal ID, like a passport or a military ID. What about that card I got from the election authority? Again, unfortunately, no. Can I use a digital image of my ID? As of now, the answer is no. In 2022, when this law first came on the books, the Secretary of State's office provided some informal guidance, particularly for, say, students that might not have a Missouri driver's license, but maybe had a passport, but they didn't bring their passport to college with them. Well, in those cases, their parents would take a digital image of their passport and text it to their kiddo who was in school, and they were allowed to use that in 2022. The Secretary of State's office just last month issued a new rule saying that that would no longer be allowed, and you need the actual ID itself. What if my picture doesn't match my appearance? That's okay. They're not supposed to scrutinize your appearance. What if I don't have any of those forms of ID? You can still vote a provisional ballot. Be sure to sign it. So we know that this is a very confusing law, and it's confusing because it's changed, and it can be difficult to get a state ID. That's one of the reasons why Missouri Voter Protection Coalition and the ACLU are in court right now, challenging Missouri's photo ID law. As you can see here, there are a lot of voters who may not have a valid ID on file with the state of Missouri. So unfortunately, that case is still pending, and so it's not been decided yet. So while it's on the books, that photo ID law will be in effect. All right, folks, we just have 2 more short sections to cover.
Denise, can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
I had a couple of young men who were going out of state to college, and they were wanting to get an absentee ballot, but they won't send those absentee ballots to another state, will they? Or will they?
Yes, they will. Absolutely.
All right.
That's a great circumstance to vote absentee. Again, it's too late to request that for the August 6th elections, but they can begin requesting absentee ballots for the November elections in September. And yes, the election authority will mail that absentee ballot to the student at their out-of-state address.
Hey, so Denise, I have a quick question about provisional ballots. Is there a difference, just for clarification, is there a difference between casting a yellow provisional ballot and a blue provisional ballot?
Yes. I'm gonna go back. Oh, come on. Stop. There we go. A yellow provisional ballot is for voters who show up at the polls and their name is not on the list
Okay.
of voters, but they believe that they're registered. That is a yellow provisional ballot. It is guaranteed by federal law. A blue provisional ballot is for voters who show up at the polls, their name is on the list, but they don't have a valid form of ID. They will cast one of these blue provisional ballots that you see on your screen. And the only difference between the two, the ballots are the same. It's simply the color of the envelope that differs, and the circumstance in which they are counted also differs.
And is there on this one, on the blue provisional ballot, now this is what was confusing to me, and not that we would have anything to do with that. There's some kind of matching up with how the signature is written.
Yeah, so
Is
if you see here, and this is on your palm card as well, if you are registered, but you show up and you say, "Hi, I'm Denise Lieberman, I'm here to vote." The poll worker looks me up and says, "Yep, I see you on the list. You need to show a photo ID," and I don't have one of those. I will cast a blue provisional ballot and sign it. And as you can see on this slide, there are two ways that ballot can count. One, if maybe you just forgot your ID, you go back to the polling place with a valid ID, it will become a regular ballot. Or more commonly, if after election day is over, all those ballots go to the election board and they compare the signature on the blue outer envelope of the provisional ballot with the signature they have for you on file with your voter registration record.
okay.
So again, if you confront voters who have to cast a blue provisional ballot because they don't have ID, please remind them to sign the ballot envelope, because if they do not, their vote will not be counted. Any other questions about that? Okay. So let's get into, we just got two more sections. Accessible voting. This is really important because one of the reasons that we're there are to help the voters that have the greatest hurdles to participation. Communities of color, working people, elderly folks, people with disabilities. And people with disabilities make up a very, very large group of voters. In fact, they're the largest single demographic voting bloc of any population. More than 35 million Americans have some disability. They make up about a sixth of the total electorate, and they face barriers to voting. The other thing about this is that it is a category that every single one of us is going to be in at some point in our life. The good news is that everybody has a right to vote, not just able-bodied people. There are many laws that guarantee assistance, accessible voting, accessible machinery, and more. And similarly, there may be people that you confront who may have limited English proficiency, who may need help reading or casting their ballot. Over 25 million Americans have some limited English proficiency, maybe because English isn't their first language, or maybe because they didn't finish a high level of education and have very limited literacy. For people for whom English is not their first language, Missouri is not required to provide bilingual ballots or bilingual materials. There are some states that are required to do so. So think about places like Florida or Arizona that have very large populations of non-English speakers. If you go vote in one of those states, the ballots are going to be available in Spanish, and in Florida, they're also available in Creole and other languages. Missouri is not required to do that. The good news is, regardless of why you have a barrier reading or casting your ballot, whether it's because of a disability, whether it's because of limited English proficiency, you have a right to assistance. In Missouri, voters have a right to get help for any reason if they need help reading or casting their ballot before, during, or after voting. And the voter can bring any person of their choice to help them vote. Now, sometimes poll workers that don't really understand this law get a little like, wait, you can't go in the voting booth with the voter. Yes, if the voter has asked you to go in the voting booth with that voter, yes, you can. So you often see, for example, an elderly person who's maybe accompanied by one of their children. So for example, my mom has a hand tremor. She's now voting absentee, but if she went into that polling booth, she couldn't fill out the circle. She would need my help to fill out the circle for her. In fact, I just helped her with her ballot today and I filled out the circles for her. You might have someone coming in to help translate for a voter and read it to them. And the poll worker can't question the voter's disability. It might not be an obvious disability. So imagine somebody with dyslexia who might have a really hard time reading, say, the ballot language. They can bring in a person to read it to them. Some people with disabilities are able to vote independently as long as they have help getting to the machine and maybe plugging in the earphones. I have a client who is legally blind, and as long as somebody helps her plug in the headphones, she can do the whole thing in Braille on her own. So we are currently in court to make sure this is enforced. But just remember, people do have a right to get help if they want it. They have a right to use an accessible voting machine. There are machines that are lower for people who are in wheelchairs. There are machines that have headphones for people who are visually impaired to follow the prompts. Call us, please. This is protected by state law. It's protected by federal law. The Voting Rights Act guarantees this. So really, we want to make sure that the most vulnerable voters among us are not turned away or made to feel like they're doing something wrong because they need to get some help. Questions with this? So please call in any issues with voters having problems. So we have these in English and in Spanish. The other things that for people with disabilities, if you cannot get into your polling place or wait in a long line, you have a right to vote curbside, meaning you can stay in your car and poll workers have to come out and bring a ballot to you. Now, how do they know you're out there? As long as anybody tells the poll worker that you're out in your car. Sometimes maybe a person with a disability might have somebody else drive them there, and that person can run in and tell somebody. Sometimes a person with a disability may drive themselves. You don't have to be physically in a wheelchair in order to qualify for curbside voting. So think of somebody like my mom who's 93. She can walk with a walker as long as it's short distances and as long as it's sort of a good day. Some days are not good days. So if it was a polling place where it was bright and sunny out, there were no steps and there was no line, she'd probably be able to walk to the desk. But if it was cold, or if it was icy, or if it was rainy, or if there was a long line, no way could she stay in that line. She's entitled to curbside voting. Okay. And it's up to that voter. So again, we want to make sure that those voters are getting serviced. They can't just be made to sit out there for hours and hours and hours just because there are other people there needing to vote. So please call those in. The other thing it's important to know for people that may find themselves in a hospital, this happens right before election day. You know, you get into a car accident or something happens and you never went and voted absentee because you had originally planned to go vote on election day. They have to bring you a ballot to the hospital. So we can help with that. The sooner we get that information, the better, because as the day goes on, you can imagine those election authorities, they're getting more and more stressed and busier. So even if they can let them know a day before or 2 days before, whenever they end up in a hospital, we can help make sure that someone can get them that ballot in the hospital. And for people that are pretty much homebound, so my mom is now in that place, she signed up to be on the permanent absentee voter list. And what this means is that they send her an absentee ballot application for every single election now. Now, she doesn't have to take it. She could go vote if she wanted to, but this will help ensure that those vulnerable folks are still being able to make their voices heard. So call in any issues you have with voters with disabilities. And again, anybody outside, even you can run in and alert a poll worker that curbside voting is needed. Some jurisdictions will have signs up, some will not. Some will have a phone number you can call, like you see on that in the picture here. Some will not. St. Louis City is going to have buzzers at every single polling place. Other jurisdictions will not. Finally, the very last thing we're going to cover today. And these are pretty much things where, you know, something bad is going down. And so call us right away. We know how nasty elections have become lately. And even in primary elections, they can get really nasty too. And we want to make sure that voters are not put in the middle of that, right? And so anything false information is illegal. Telling people that the elections are rigged is illegal. You know, standing there kind of taking weird pictures of people as they're coming in, or taking pictures of people's cars or license plates. Undue police presence at the polling places is intimidating in many communities. Weapons, no weapons are allowed in a polling place in the state of Missouri. So it's an open carry state. People can have them in their cars. You cannot bring a weapon into a polling place. And anything that is intimidating to voters. How do you know if something's intimidating to voters? Ask the voters. If voters feel really like, oh, put off by something, then they're feeling intimidated. And that kind of behavior should not go on. The poll supervisor should make sure come out and tell those people they gotta leave. And if they won't, we are going to make sure that happens. So there are some rules that differ from state to state. So everywhere though, intimidation is illegal. Discrimination, targeting voters based on race or sex or disability is illegal. Challenging voters without having an actual reason or doing anything that interferes with their right to vote. You cannot block people's ability to get into or out of the polling place. You can't have something that people have to sort of walk around, like you can't have a banner that they have to walk around or anything like that. The things that differ state by state are things like challenge protocols and buffer zones. Here in Missouri, here are the rules. The only people who can challenge voters are people who are credentialed challengers. They are inside the polling place. Their names are submitted ahead of time. They have to wear credentials. They are allowed, if they have a reason to believe, if I show up and say, I'm Denise Lieberman on Waterman Boulevard, I'm here to vote. If they have some proof that maybe I don't live on Waterman Boulevard or that I am not Denise Lieberman, they can challenge me, but they cannot talk to me directly. They can only talk to the poll worker. And at that point, the poll worker has to double check to make sure I've shown my ID here. Yes, I'm asserting under oath that this is my address. And if I'm a valid voter, I'm allowed to vote. Now, it's a different group of people who can be outside the polls, and pretty much anybody can be outside the polling place, but no one can be within 25 feet. That buffer zone is 25 feet, and that's intended to just give voters a little bit of breathing room so that they're not getting inundated as they walk in or feeling like they cannot sort of even get in the door. And so nobody outside can block an entrance or an exit or make people kind of have to walk around you. They cannot scream at voters, intimidate voters. So anything like this that comes up, call 866-OUR-VOTE. If it's something where there's like a visual going on, we had a situation in 2020, for example, where a big truck with a Confederate flag on it and a big old gun rack on the back of the truck showed up and started like doing like wheelies in the parking lot of a polling place and was yelling at voters, and that's intimidating. Okay. And luckily we have poll monitors there who took some photos, took some video, and those folks were made to leave. So we take this very, very seriously. There is no place for intimidation in our elections, because that only harms our democracy. If somebody people should not be in any way intimidated or made to feel scared when they show up at their polling place. And that includes police, by the way, especially in communities of color that are over-prosecuted, over-persecuted. There is no reason for a police car to just be sitting there. Now, police do have a right to show up and do police business. They often transport, election officials. So they can drive them there, drop them off, pick them up, pick up the ballots and securely transport them. But there's no reason for a police car to be sitting there, and there's absolutely no reason for a police officer to be inside the polling place. All of this is a lot. Again, it's all right here on your phone card. Here are your rights. If your eligibility is challenged, here's your right to assistance. You have a right to vote curbside. You have a right to get a new ballot. If you make a mistake and you haven't cast it yet, you can tear it up and get a new one. And you have a right to vote free from intimidation. And I'm really serious. I'll get you in a second, Jean.
Okay.
This is and I mean, we take this very, very seriously. It's illegal under state law to do anything that would impede a voter from voting. And it's illegal under federal law. The Voting Rights Act also makes this illegal. And it's a real crime. Intimidating voters is a 5-year felony. Conspiring, meaning two people who are on it together, is a 10-year felony. Any violence in voting, 10-year felony. So this stuff is real, and we want to make sure that no voter is confronting anything negative, including by police, on election day. So any of these issues, long lines, broken machines, poll workers, giving wrong information, anything that's intimidating, a poll not being open on time, or anybody that tries to close early, because if you are in line at 7 p.m., you can vote. Just because they may be slow, they don't have a right. Those folks got to sit there. They're getting paid for the whole day. They're not getting paid a lot, but they're getting paid. They cannot close early. If you are there at 7 p.m., even if you are in line, you have a right to vote. So, and keep in mind, this is true. If you previously have a felony, but you're off paper and you're registered, you can vote. If your house is in foreclosure, but you're still living there, you can vote. You can vote if you have unpaid tickets, unpaid child support, unpaid taxes. You can even vote if you have a warrant for your arrest. They cannot stand at that door and arrest you then. You should probably contact a lawyer and take care of that, but they cannot. You still have a right to vote until you are convicted of a felony and incarcerated. So thank you all. I want to leave some time for some Q&A. Yes. So when you go, Damon, when you go on to protectthevote.net, you will get a confirmation link, and you'll go to app.protectthevote.net, and everything will be there, and you'll see on the dashboard, one of the options is to create a report on election day. Any other questions? Barbara?
Is it more effective to call if you have a problem or text if you have a problem?
I think it's more effective to call, because then you're getting an attorney on the phone right there and then immediately. And the text, and you're getting an attorney from Missouri,
Sure.
so you're on the phone literally right that second.
Very good. Thanks.
Okay, one last question from me about provisional voting. How do people know if their vote counts?
So
Gets
provisional
counted.
ballot, yeah, sure. Provisional ballots are counted after election day. So these are circumstances where the voter says, I'm registered to vote, and they're like, we can't find you on the rolls. You cast that provisional ballot, they get set aside. The voter will be given a stub after you complete that outer envelope. It's a stub, it has an 800 number and a QR code, and you can check and see if your provisional ballot was counted. They have
Thank
2
you.
weeks after election day to certify the elections, and that's the period in which those provisional ballots get vetted. And what happens is that the election authority will pull up the full database and look and find you and see if it was just a glitch or an error or something like that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All righty. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And again, a big special thanks. Please give a shout out to Pat Jones-Macklin and Anita Russell, who are the regional coordinators in Kansas City, and to Don Crozier, who's the coordinator in St. Charles County. Last night, we had our St. Louis people on. These folks just do incredible work to help organize everybody and keep us all together. And so you've got that friendly face here with the state org, but you've also got that friendly face on the ground in your own community. If you haven't yet, sign up at protectthevote.net and everything you need will be there, and you'll get follow-ups as well. Thank you all. And don't hesitate to reach out with any other questions. I'm happy to stay on if there are more questions. Go ahead, Jean.
No, I don't, I didn't mean to do that. Thank you. I wanted to say thank you.
Have a great night, everybody.
You too.
Bye.
Denise,
Yes,
I probably have a silly question.
of course.
As far as the voter ID and the provisional ballot that they get, that we need to make sure that they sign, are they coming back with some sort of ID, or will their signature end up counting?
Their signature will count. If they don't have ID, they will match it goes back to the election authority. So when you register to vote, you had to sign that voter registration card. That
Right.
signature's in your voter file. If
Oh,
you
okay.
ever requested an absentee ballot, you had to sign that. It's in
Right.
your file. All of that is digitized as part of your file.
Okay, so that is a way for people without voter ID to vote.
Correct.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, yes. So that's what I mean. They don't have to go home without voting. Keep in mind, though, that, if you register to vote maybe online, like using an iPad or something,
Mm-hmm.
the signature may look a little different than the signature that you sign, using a pen and paper. So we're trying to make sure that everybody has valid ID, but yes, absolutely. If you don't have a valid ID, you can cast a provisional ballot that will be counted if your signature matches. And we have been tracking the data from our local election authorities. They tend to err on the side of finding that they match.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, and thanks for all you do to protect the vote, Denise.
Thank you. Thank you
And
all
all you
for being here. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Have a
Right.
great night.
You too.
Bye-bye.